You are Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Detroit on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's alive, Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST. Welcome one, welcome all. My name is Jake Riepma. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake_Riepma. Lots to discuss on this edition of the live Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST. Thanks so much, as always, for tuning in. Fired up to have you. And this is Locked On Sports Detroit. It's all part of the Locked On Sports Network, your team each and every day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, wherever you get your podcasts as well. This is a Locked On Michigan POSTCAST, recapping a Michigan loss to the top-ranked Oregon Ducks, 38-17, the final. In this one, we'll discuss what went wrong, we'll discuss what went right, and where to turn from here. So as always, we thank you for making Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST your first listen following the final whistle. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Locked On Wolverines POSTCAST brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I guess we could just start right there if you're into betting. The line in this one was 14.5. So certainly Vegas thought the Wolverines were significant underdogs at home, which they were. But that late touchdown for the Oregon Ducks resulted in, yes, a win for the Ducks. That wasn't the only reason they won this game. Certainly not. But if you play the betting game, that took it from the margin of victory to cover for the Ducks, winning 38-17, winning by 21 instead of by 14. So there you have it. But let's go through this one, what went right, what didn't go right, and then we will talk about where do the Wolverines go from here. Because I think I'll start by saying this. I think this is a benchmark, a measuring stick type of game if you're the Michigan Wolverines. And I didn't plan on necessarily going off this way, but if you want to get in on the comments as well, we encourage you to use the comment function on YouTube here. Let me know your thoughts. But this was a measuring stick game in the sense that last year, only 1 year ago, less than that, Michigan was Oregon, top-ranked team, winning a national championship. And in today's landscape of college football, of the portal, of NIL, for Michigan to take this big of a step backwards. Look, I know they had everybody drafted. I understand that. New head coach. Harbaugh goes to the NFL. There's so new offensive core, new staff. There was so much turnover, but to take this big of a step backwards, or even to stay where the Wolverines are, and you look elsewhere around the landscape of college football, everybody else got better. How did the Wolverines get this much worse? You've got a national championship defending team that's now 5-4, unranked, and getting their doors blown off by what you used to be. So as a Wolverines fan, this is frustrating from a grand scheme of things, from the big picture things, and it starts offensively. And this is not to be disrespectful towards Davis Warren or Alex Orji, but they're just not the quality caliber players you need to compete with the best teams. And again, and those that know me know, I don't love the transfer portal. I don't think you go to the transfer portals for every single answer, but you needed a better solution at quarterback than Alex Orji or Davis Warren. And Oregon's a great example. You've got Dylan Gabriel, who's transferred a couple of times, and they're the top-ranked team in all of college football. They're undefeated. Now they're a Big Ten team. So the days of just being able to say, we're Michigan, we'll be good, are gone. And it didn't take long. It happened fast. You see exactly how quick it can go from being a national championship team to really irrelevant nationally. 5-4. You got the students leaving the game early. There was the aerial shot with still time left because they know Michigan has no chance in winning this game. The stadium's half empty. And quickly, it has turned in Ann Arbor from the premier program in all of college football to I don't want to say dumpster fire yet, but just a middle of the pack, blah, meh, whatever other adjective you want to use. And watching today's game was just the realization of that. You're no longer, you can't say this is Michigan, we're gonna get all the 5 stars. No, you gotta be more proactive about getting better players. And that sounds so simple, but that's just the fact of the matter. Look at Miami. That's another. Cam Ward transfers to Miami, and he might win a Heisman Trophy. They're undefeated in the ACC. Why couldn't Michigan be that proactive about getting a program-changing player under center as the quarterback to lead this program? And I know I'm voicing a lot of people's frustrations, but to take as big of a step backwards as Michigan has. And I don't know why it just felt like today was the realization of all that, because it's 9 games into this season. We know who this team is. They were lucky to beat USC. Maybe not that. Maybe that's not fair, but they were fortunate to beat Michigan State, who's also not a good team. I thought Michigan State outplayed Michigan. So there's 2 wins right there that this team very, very easily could be 3-6 instead of 5-4. And you're coming off a national championship. And to me, it's an organizational flaw at the very top of how Michigan ended up this way. And I don't know if I don't know if this is going to be, representative of what this team turns into going forward, or if this is just a down year. I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think this is who Michigan is, or is this a down year? Let me know in the comments where you're at on that, because based on the more and more sample size of what other teams are looking like in college football. I mean, look at Penn State, Ohio State. I mean, all in the Big Ten, you've got these teams that have the ability to load up through the transfer portal, and Michigan just hasn't done that. And again, I don't want it to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but you got to find a way to have a program-changing type of quarterback. That's where it starts. And what this Michigan team, and when this defense that we thought was going to be just so incredibly, penetratable on the defensive side, but Wink Martindale is going to continue to carry the torch, and that just hasn't happened. And so unfortunate there as well, and just a lot of things that are unfortunate about this season with the Michigan Wolverines. But let's go through this one. They lose to Oregon 38-17, and the way this game started, Michigan goes 3 and out, just 3 yards of offense on that opening drive. They punt it to Oregon, who marches 63 yards on 12 plays, and just a statement drive to begin this game. And eventually Dylan Gabriel completing it to Justice Lowe for 6 yards for the touchdown to cap that 63-yard drive. And at that point, I was smelling blowout. I really was. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I thought that was easy. This offense isn't doing anything. The offense comes back and punts. This was a game-changing play, though, when Oregon fumbles that punt, because it sets Michigan up with the short field. They go just 28 yards. And to their credit, they find a way to get the ball in the end zone. Samaj Morgan, it was Davis Warren to Tyler Morris. That's right, for the 7-yard touchdown. And that was one of for Davis Warren. When you look at what he did today, again, this is not an anti-Davis Warren postcast, but he had the 2 touchdowns, 12 of 21 for 2 touchdowns, and you need more out of him. There's just no other way to put it. And for Michigan at that point of the game, you're thinking, all right, now maybe they've got a chance. Maybe they've got a way to try to slow down this potent Oregon offense. It's 7-7. You're feeling good. But very next drive for Oregon, they go 6 plays, 75 yards, takes just 2 minutes, and they get the score to go up 14-7. Michigan punts, Oregon punts, a couple of punts later, and Oregon really sees momentum before the conclusion of that first half with the 21-7. Michigan does get the field goal, though, but Oregon comes right back to get that touchdown to make it 28-10. And so to be down 18 after the first half, what a second quarter it was for Oregon. This is where they created the separation, outscoring Michigan 21-3 in that second quarter. I said second half, I meant second quarter. You know what I meant. But point being, Oregon, again, created the separation from Michigan in that second quarter. And the Wolverines were just a day late, a dollar short, and just a step too slow. That's what this game represented. And that's what you saw from the Michigan Wolverines offensively and defensively. I won't say special teams because I thought Michigan special teams overall were good. But to the second half, in a 28-10 hole to begin the third quarter, but Michigan played all right in that third quarter, outscored Oregon 7-3. But in that third quarter, they forced the punt to start for Oregon, and then 10-play 75-yard drive. That's when you're thinking, okay, can Michigan make a game of this? Davis Warren finding Peyton O'Leary in the back of the end zone for a 6-yard score, and it goes from an 18-point deficit then to the 11-point deficit. And that's where you're thinking, all right, can Michigan find a way to get a stop? But the Ducks get that field goal. And even though it was only a field goal, that gives you so much momentum then to go up the two scores up by 14 in that case, and eventually cruise in the fourth quarter for the win. And again, if you're with me at the beginning of the program, when you talk about the gambling implications of that last touchdown for Oregon, that put them over the 14.5-point spread. So in the end, it's 38-17. It's Michigan falling to Oregon, and the Wolverines just realizing, or for me anyways, that this team is just a long, long ways away. It happened quick. It only took 1 year. As far as some team stats in this one, again, this vaunted defense that we thought Michigan had, they just don't. There is no other way to put it. Oregon offensively, 23 first downs. They are so efficient on third down. They converted 10 of 15 third downs, and the defense has got to find a way to get off the field. And when you give up 10 third down conversions out of 15, that's just going to be so disheartening, deflating for your defense. And so that, to me, says a lot about where this defense is at. They just can't make the big plays to get off the field when it matters the most. Curious your thoughts as well. We're going to take your comments next. Don't go anywhere. Your comments are next. We're just getting started on a live Locked On Wolverines postcast. Hey, this episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. That's right. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, and agonizing second overtime. Or in this case, it just takes a lot of energy to try to get through a day at the big house, something that the Michigan student section didn't have because they left. They should have some 5 Hour Energy, because let me tell you, there's no better feeling than when that 5 Hour Energy hits. You feel clear, you get a little boost of energy, and don't forget about what makes 5 Hour Energy great. The friends over at 5 Hour Energy created the 5 Hour Energy shot with special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are in first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. We see you. You got to try the 5 Hour Energy shot with the special flavor Fan Fuel. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. So it's available on 5hourenergy.com and shipped nationwide. Don't forget to fuel up with Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy shots, available at 5hourenergy.com and shipped nationwide. Michigan falls to top-ranked Oregon, in a reminder of how far away this Michigan team is to being among the elite in the sport of college football. The upper echelon, some would say. They just are not there. There is no doubt about it. So let's get to your comments after a 38-17 loss at the Big House. Another home loss, which you look at Michigan's schedule, and the home loss for the Wolverines to Texas to begin the season was a tough pill to swallow, if you will. and they've been outplayed a couple of times. You look more, and we'll talk about the schedule to close the season at the end of the program, but they beat Fresno State 30-10. I don't want to say sneaked out of victory, but remember that was the Will Johnson pick six, and they scored a couple of touchdowns late in that game. Blown out by Texas at home 31-12. I guess we'll count the 28-18 win over Arkansas State. 27-24 narrow victory over USC, 27-24 narrow victory over Minnesota, the loss on the road to Washington 27-17, and then the loss on the road to Illinois 21-7 before beating Michigan State at home 24-17, and then losing to Oregon at home 38-17. So let's get to your comments. Demetrius McNeil leads us off first. Brad Holmes was at the Michigan game today. Yes, I know this is Locked On Detroit Sports, but what happened to the Michigan State's running game? Pistons score 13 points and lose big to the Knicks. Yeah, we were not on a Locked On Pistons postcast after yesterday's game for good reason, but it was a tough one to watch. That is for sure. All right. Freddie Felt 313 says, Fire Wink, sign Underwood. There you go. Not a lot of people on the Wink Martindale bandwagon, and for good reason, because I think this defense has underachieved. There is no doubt about that. And you look at who might be potential replacements to be, and look at Tom Allen. I know Penn State lost today, but that's a guy that was a head coach that went to Penn State, now is a defensive coordinator after being at Indiana. And he did a great job, or he's done a great job. And so for Michigan to find some defensive coordinator replacements, maybe you want to start looking at a guy like Underwood and who might be the replacement for the Michigan Wolverines. That is certainly something to keep an eye on. And you want to sign Underwood, the quarterback from Belleville, local kid. And I know a lot of people think that Michigan's going to flip him from who he's committed to already at LSU. But I don't know. I don't know if you think that's the spot to go, or if, one guy and we talked about game-changing quarterbacks. So maybe Underwood is in fact he's a local kid. He was at the game against Michigan State. So maybe there is a recruiting flip in the future for Underwood out of Belleville. That would be certainly interesting to see if the Wolverines can land Bryce Underwood. As far as defensive coordinator replacements for Martindale, that would be interesting to see, interesting to monitor. Like I said, Tom Allen's a guy that did it as a head coach and then took over the defense for Penn State. So something to keep an eye on there. Woodshed Moments. Michigan is done for the rest of the season. I can't stand Oregon, and losing at home to Oregon is absolutely insulting. But you can blame Sharon Moores for the loss. Warren shouldn't have been QB. Yeah, I know there's a lot of blame to go around. Sharon Moore, as the CEO of the program, the head coach of the program, should take a lot of that blame. Colston Loveland is the only playmaker on the offense. It's tough to come up with offense without the playmakers to do so from a coaching perspective. But that also lands on Sharon Moore for not recruiting the right guys, or not finding a way to rebuild this roster, as opposed to trying to just continue on as the University of Michigan and hope for the best. All right. From Ugly Country, wondering now how many of the Big Ten fans are starting to hate the new Big Ten with the new school on top. Yeah, Oregon. I mean, it does sound funny saying the Big Ten when it's Oregon and it's Washington, and you miss the pageantry of the Big Ten, Pac-10, and then eventually, Big Ten, Pac-12 rivalries in the Rose Bowl and things like that. It's just not going to be that way anymore, which I think is a bummer. But at the same time, you get Michigan versus USC. You get Michigan versus Oregon, some of those matchups in the regular season that you wouldn't otherwise get. And it adds a whole nother layer. And for Michigan, though, I don't want to say it levels the playing field, because yes, they won the national championship and back-to-back Big Ten championships leading up to that. But you want Michigan's goals were always national championships anyway. So you kind of needed to get to that national level to achieve what Michigan's goals were. And so to be 5-4, yes, I think you attribute some of that to the more difficult schedule, losing to Washington, losing to Oregon, but you're also just not that good of a team. And there's no other way to put it. And how about, I mean, the emergence of Indiana, that's been crazy under Kurt Cignetti. 47-10, they beat Michigan State today, blew their doors off, and Michigan will play Indiana. I know that that game's coming up. It's next, so there you go. It's next Saturday, November the 9th. Michigan will be on the road against Indiana before Northwestern comes to town, and then Ohio State. So you very well could be looking at, for Michigan, a losing season, at 5-4 right now. Let's say that maybe they get Northwestern and 2 losses there between, and I'm not saying Michigan's going to lose, but certainly are not going to be favored against Indiana or Ohio State. So if you lose those games, you're looking at a 6-6 season, and that is a tough pill to swallow coming off a national championship. So appreciate everybody tuning in to the live Locked On Wolverines postcast. And at this point, I do think we put our hope in signing Bryce Underwood and trying to flip him from LSU and otherwise hitting the portal and trying to find a way to rebuild this Michigan team. Don't go anywhere. We're going to tie a bow on it next here on the Locked On Wolverines postcast on Locked On Sports Detroit. Hey, this episode of the Locked On Wolverines postcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Make no mistake about it, and get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. You can also find live odds anytime at FanDuel.com. It is more than just a sports book. In fact, it's your one-stop shop for everything. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. It's all on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com, join today, and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It all happens at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Final segment of the program. Michigan loses to Oregon 38-17, and at times it didn't feel that close. That being said, Michigan down by 14. We're driving, and you felt like maybe this could be when they cut into that lead. And it wasn't even bad play calling. It wasn't one thing or the other. It just felt like Michigan didn't. Just a day late and a dollar short is the best way I can describe it. And before, when Michigan was down at that point, driving down 31-17, trying to make it a 2-score game, and they go on that 11 after they force the first punt from Oregon. They go 11 plays, 70 yards, and unfortunately, they come up short on, they try that trick play on 4th and 5. Samaj Morgan passes incomplete. And I put that on the marquee because the trick plays were working against Michigan State. And then when they don't work against Oregon, everybody's upset. But you go from 3rd and 7 at the Oregon 12, trying to punch it in to get within 1 score. And if you're in 1 score, then you're just a stop and score away. But at 3rd and 7, the run play, that's where I thought it was, and I understand the thought process is, hey, this is 4-down territory. It's 3rd and 7. Let's make it 4th and 2, 4th and 3. They won't expect the run, but Mullings only gets 2 yards. So then 4th and 5, yes, that's manageable, but that completely changes the dynamics of the play calling. And at 4th and 5, Michigan unable to get the get the conversion, and that was kind of the end of it. Oregon goes down and score, and so on and so forth. But not a ton doing statistically for the Wolverines, just 105 yards rushing, 52 for Donovan Edwards on 10 carries, 39 for Alex Orji on 6 carries. Got roughed up a couple of times around the goal line. Mullins, just 8 carries for 16 yards, only 2 yards per carry there. So nothing doing there, and nothing doing for this offense. I mean, Colston Loveland at one point was responsible for over half the offense. 7 receptions, 112 yards for him. And it just goes to show you can't have a one-man offense. And unfortunately for Michigan, they look like a 500 team. There's no other way to put it. But want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's always a pleasure. 38-17, the final in this one. Michigan will have 3 games left to try to get bowl eligible. And who would have thought we'd be saying this? But Michigan will take on Indiana on Saturday. And then against Northwestern, final home game of the season in 2 weeks on the 23rd, and then the game on the 30th at Ohio State in Columbus at the Horseshoe. So we'll be with you every step of the way. Tomorrow, we've got Locked On Lions postcast after a huge game. Later start, afternoon slate or the late slate before Sunday Night Football. America's game of the week, Lions and Packers. Make sure you tune in for a live Locked On Lions postcast after that one. Shout out to Isaiah Hull on the daily Locked On Wolverines podcast. He's been incredible. Always enjoy following his stuff as well. And thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Wolverines podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe to Locked On Sports Detroit, because we do the post game. That's how it works. We do the postcast shows right after the conclusion of the game, and we rap about it. We chop it up, and it's a collaborative environment, and love having everybody along. So also shout out to my Northwood Timberwolves. Big win over Ohio Dominican today in blowout fashion. Shout out to the boys getting it done. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate everybody as always, and it's always a pleasure to be on the air. We'll see you next time on Locked On Sports Detroit, which will be tomorrow evening for a Locked On Lions postcast. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and share the video as well. And we'll talk to you next time. Have a wonderful night on Locked On Sports Detroit.